what he's saying is that the one God, the God of all things, when he faithfully and decided to create all the things, all he had to do was sit down and sit on his throne and enjoy everything that he had made. And there's a subtle distinction in this. When somebody rests from battle, there's a sense of exhaustion. Maybe they're glad the fighting's done, but there's a need to renew and refresh. This isn't suggesting that the God of the universe, Yahweh, the God of the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's not suggesting that he was tired after he works and created all things. But there's a different sense. He's not resting from exhaustion. He's resting in completion. And there is a big difference in that. He's not tired, but he's sitting down to now enjoy what he has made, his rule, his reign, his realm, and he invites people into that. The way that I think about it is this. I've experienced, and I don't know if you have too, but the difference between resting in exhaustion versus resting in completion. Right? When we rest from exhaustion, we've worked really hard and we're physically just emptied. We're fatigued. And so we need a moment to refresh. And I remember we've moved as a family a couple of different times. And there were two moves in particular where we decided I would go first with all of our earthly possessions packed into a Penske truck, the largest they would sell. I still think it's crazy that they let people without CDLs drive those. It's just unsafe. But here we are moving all of our earthly possessions in this truck, and I am to go ahead of my family to get there and find some new friends that might help me unload all of our earthly possessions and do those awkward maneuverings with couches up and down stairs and around stairwells and all of these different things. Because both times we moved, we had 3 levels to move into, which is just crazy talk. An upstairs, a ground floor, and a downstairs. And we decided that large furniture would go on all floors, which is also crazy. But once I finished the unpacking of the Penske truck, I was exhausted. It was tiring. If you've ever helped a friend move, God bless you, and you're tired at the end of that. But it's not the end of being tired, because you now have the work of putting everything in its place. Because oftentimes people will help you unpack, but then you've got to put everything in order. And I remember the resting from the exhaustion of unpacking everything. But then over the next several days, before my family was going to arrive, I got to work hard in moving things into their spots. Furniture in the living room, kitchen, unpacking and putting things in cupboards, cabinets, but putting my kids' furniture in their rooms. And the idea there was that when they came, I wanted them to arrive. And at the end of that work and toil, I got to experience the joy of completion. Resting that now it's done. Preparation and then enjoyment. And now when they arrive, I get to welcome them into their new home with all their stuff in all of their rooms. And there's a difference between the rest from exhaustion versus the rest in completion. And what we see in Genesis 2 is that very thing. God is not resting because he's tired. Sin has not entered the world, and yet he has chosen to rest, and then he sits enthroned, and now he rests from his work, and then he gives humanity work to do. He gives them their vocation. He says, now I want you, as my image bearers, to go about spreading my image throughout all of creation. Be fruitful and multiply. And then in Genesis 2:15, he puts them in the garden to work it and to keep it. This is all before the fall. And so they're given a responsibility to cultivate life and to cause the Garden of Eden to spread throughout all of the globe, not only spreading flourishing, but also spreading Sabbath rest. This idea of enjoyment, joining in with God, enjoying the work and the fruit of his labor and their co-labor with him. And so it's an idea about enjoyment. Sabbath rest, ultimately, yes, can it be seen as a day? For sure, God instituted it, the 4th commandment. But that is simply to install into a sinful world a rhythm where we might somehow realize the need to stop from our labors and recognize rest only comes in him. Contentment and joy only comes in resting in him. And so God's rest, while it will be talked about as a land, It will be talked about as a temple in 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, Psalms, Isaiah. It will also be understood possibly as a spiritual blessing. And all of these are true. We can't extract any one of them and say, that's what it is, that's what it is. But all of this is leading to the idea that Sabbath rest is not a day. It's not a set of rules. And it's not something that we were made for, but it was made for us so that we would enter into the enjoyment with the King of the universe. And it ultimately is a destiny down the road.